Hi, welcome back to the Permanent Records YouTube channel. My name's Lance. I'm the owner of Permanent Records and the Permanent Records Roadhouse, and this is part 2 of the Dan Schwartz estate collection. I previously made a video explaining who Dan Schwartz was, how we acquired this record collection, and you should go watch that if you haven't already. And this is the sequel to that video, showing off even more of the rarities from Dan Schwartz's amazingly curated record collection of audiophile pressings, 90s rarities, insane ethnographic records, awesome box sets. I failed to mention that in the first video, but there were just an amazing amount of really great box sets, and I can't say that very often with most of the record collections that we buy. Not only do most people not buy box sets, you don't usually get these mosaic box sets. There just aren't that many of them, and that is why they're so expensive. And then we also have this beast of a box set, the Heavyweight Champion by John Coltrane. I forget how many LPs are in this thing, but it's beautiful. A lot of his earlier material is included in here, a lot of classic era Coltrane. I believe it's all Atlantic Records releases. So anyway, without further ado, we'll get straight into the records. Apologize for my discomfort because it's extremely warm back here. It's not too hot for the records, but it's too hot for me. So we'll get right into it. As you remember, there were amazing 90s records in this lot, and this particular copy of Bad Motorfinger is on that translucent yellow or gold vinyl. Absolutely amazing to find that in a collection. They just are not out there. Here we have an Audiophile live, Country Joe and the Fish. If you have not heard Electric Music for the Mind and Body, you got to go check out that album. That's one of the best psychedelic country rock albums that exists. That's George Harrison's Brainwashed. I don't know what pressing that is off the top of my head, but this looks to be a repressing of Cowboy Junkies, the Trinity Sessions. You got some rare Elvis Costello and the Imposters there. It's still sealed. This Clash London Calling is still sealed. How about that? There were not a whole lot of still sealed records in the mix, but that one was in there. This is David Chesworth. I was not previously familiar with this record. Looked interesting when I pulled it out, and there it was. Big value to that one. Jimi Hendrix Live at Woodstock. That's like a triple LP set. Awesome. OG PJ Harvey, To Bring You My Love, the original printed inner sleeve. Awesome. Just don't see this kind of stuff every day. That's the insanely unlistenable, not a first pressing, unlistenable, difficult listening Captain Beefheart album. For beginners, I recommend Safe as Milk or one of the earlier albums. Trout Mask Replica is an acquired taste indeed, but a landmark album in the experimental music world. We got a Japanese pressing of Hounds of Love, more Kate Bush, Dreaming Japanese pressing, and then circle back, we got the Soundgarden Louder Than Love LP. Just amazing. So nice to find those records filed away for many, many years and then brought out into the world. There's a rare Bruce Springsteen title. What is this guy? The Sadness of Things. This is Stephen Stapleton and David Tibet. Difficult to come by. We showed a bunch of Stereolab records in the previous video. Here we are showing more Stereolab, probably the majority of the catalog. This is a cool Japanese pressing of The Kick Inside by Kate Bush. We got Burning Spear, Garvey's Ghost, if I remember right. This is an OG pressing. Is that still sealed? Sure enough, still sealed. Garvey's Ghost, Killer Reggae, 90s cracker. We got, I don't think I can show the bottom of this, but that's the Mo-Fi pressing of the self-titled Blind Faith album. We'll keep the very questionable album art out of this video. Super Session, Mo-Fi, OG UK on that Vertigo swirl. Everybody loves so much. Gentle Giant Octopus, classic progressive rock with just amazing artwork. I believe that's Roger Dean. How could it not be Roger Dean? Maybe it's not Roger Dean. I'd love to see a correction in the comments if it's not Roger Dean. Some Dead related stuff there. Jerry Garcia, Japanese pressing of So by Peter Gabriel. We got one of the two self-titled Peter Gabriel albums. That's a Japanese pressing as well. It's an audiophile pressing of Nightbeat, a test pressing of Ry Cooder's. No, I'm sorry. This is a test pressing of Buena Vista Social Club's Chan Chan, including Ry Cooder, a non-sealed but original London Calling by The Clash with the original printed inner sleeves. Punk rock classic, but you don't need me to tell you that. Got some Francis Bebe here. If you're not familiar with his stuff, you have to check out Francis Bebe. What do we have here? Nancy Griffin, some Japanese thing I really don't know anything about, to be honest. I showed a copy of My Life in the Bush with Ghosts, Bush of Ghosts on the last video. There's another Japanese pressing of that. A ton of Eno in this collection, Japanese pressing. Frippin' Eno, some can related, Holger Zuke, Ken Axis. There was a little bit of krautrock in here. Classics by Bob Dylan. There's Blonde on Blonde. We got an audiophile reissue of that Duke Ellington Blues in Orbit right there. Cool electric era Miles. This is Dark Magus. More Miles in the mix. That's live Miles. And you got some obscure releases. Everything on this label obscure. It's really interesting electronic music. This is the John White, Gavin Byers Machine music, not Lou Reed's Metal Machine music. That's a different affair altogether. Here we go. We got some Albert Eiler. This is Ghosts. Free jazz fiends know all about ghosts. There we go. Some modern, some contemporary audiophile blues rock. There were, as I mentioned, a lot of international records. This is Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. This is amazing Indian stuff. You have to peep that out. He's just insane. If you get down with Indian classical music, yeah, you would love that. I mean, if you get down with that sort of thing, you probably already know who this is. So, yeah. All right, I'm going to rearrange here and I'll be right back. Okay, continuing on. Here we have a Japanese pressing of Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones with the workable zipper, of course, that classic Andy Warhol art design. We got Us 3 on Blue Note. Amazing stuff. That's really hard to find too. Stop Making Sense soundtrack with the original booklet. I won't pull that out here in the interest of saving time. More Talking Heads. This is the Japanese pressing of Speaking in Tongues. We got more Matthew Sweet. I showed a Matthew Sweet album in the previous video. LA Staples, Wall of Voodoo. There must be something special about that. I don't know why else it would have been in this particular crate, but that's Keith Tippett Blueprint. Great jazz stuff. Japanese pressing, This Mortal Coil. So cool. It's nice to get these records at all in good shape. And I haven't even mentioned how impeccable the condition is on most of these records. They all look like they were handled by a pro, which they were, and look to have been played just a handful of times each. Here's a really cool modern jazz thing. I've never heard that. I'm stoked to check that out. And that's one of those things, one of the coolest things about buying a record collection in its entirety like this is you get the sense of what somebody's tastes are, and you can almost guarantee that almost any record in this collection is going to be worth checking out, because Dan Schwartz just really had great taste and curated an amazing record collection. Here's an example of just one of the hundreds of ethnographic records in the mix. There were a lot of albums on the Okora label in this collection, and we'll be offering those up for sale at some point. This particular one is still sealed. Yeah, we won't get into all of those things in this particular video because we simply don't have time to get through the many hundreds of albums that we bought from this estate. But you will be pleased with what we have to offer. Oh my gosh, Ali Farkatura. If you're not familiar with this African blues musician, get down immediately. If you like stuff like Tanarwin or Group Bombino, that sort of thing, Imdal Mokhtar, this is the origins. This is the seminal beginnings of that scene, and that sounds absolutely amazing. Indian classical stuff, audiophile pressings of jazz reissues, just absolutely stunning stuff. Terry Riley, he is one of the best modern composers in my opinion. A Rainbow and Curved Air is one of his great albums, and maybe my favorite. Anyway, just really cool, repetitive and hypnotic modern compositions. That's the Dead, Live Dead does this. Of course it does have the booklet. This record is not that hard to come by, but it is hard to come by with this little mini booklet insert. In that condition, it's just absolutely immaculate, and most of these records are. Cool audiophile reissue of Pet Sounds. I don't need to tell you about Pet Sounds. Here's a Japanese pressing of Yesterday and Today. This record, still sealed, surprisingly valuable. I am always, it never ceases to amaze me, you know, what is valuable in the contemporary market, and that record surprised us. We got the Glory soundtrack. There were a good amount of soundtracks in the mix as well. Got some super clean Beatles reissues here. We'll just go ahead and show those off real quick. I mean, you know, if you got good taste, you got Beatles records in your collection. They were one of the greatest of all time. Obviously, I don't need to tell you that, but any record collection that doesn't have Beatles records in it is sus. Yeah, so here you go. The Blue Nile, that's amazing. 80s new wave. You got the Paris, Texas soundtrack by Ry Cooder there. Music, vocal music from Mongolia. Yet again, this one's on tangent, but a really cool ethnographic record. Dan curated an amazing collection of international music documents from music far and wide all over the planet. And yeah, these field recordings are cool documents of the folk music that was made by the people of these places, in this case the Philippines, oftentimes indigenous tribes that were making music just for themselves and each other. Here's an Iranian one. Yeah, that's a thing. A lot of times audiophiles aren't just collecting records of music, pop music that, you know, they know and love. They're curating a record collection of sounds, and some of those recorded sounds are things that, you know, you, especially pre-internet, couldn't hear otherwise. And that's something I think a lot of people that grew up in the 21st century forget about. The only, just to throw out Bowie Japanese pressings, Beatles Japanese pressings, the only way you could hear music from distant, faraway lands is to have bought these records, and many of them were only available as imports, so you had to really go out of your way and spend a fair amount of money getting your hands on some of these recordings. So again, kudos to Dan Schwartz for curating such an amazing record collection. If you dig Southern rock, it's one of the best. Love me some Allman Brothers, and the first album with Whipping Post on it is absolutely stunning. Another Audiophile reissue. You can't have just one Audiophile reissue of Pet Sounds. You have to have a backup. More 90s classics. We got Pod by the Breeders. Last Splash. Oh, Last Splash is, or may not actually be in here, but anyway, there were a fair amount of cool reggae records. I already showed another Burning Spear, Garvey's Ghost, in a previous video. Here's another contemporary jazz thing. That's Todd Cochran. Japanese pressing. No big deal. Mad Dogs and Englishmen. But the Japanese pressing is so cool with that obi strip. All of these, almost all of them had, the Japanese pressings had obi strips and inserts. And we're getting close to the end of this crate. Old and in the Way, that one's come up in value. As you know, that's a bluegrassy, Grateful Dead related thing. Another Bjork album, and Frank Black from the Pixies, of course. Just what a fun collection this was to buy. I don't even know what else to say aside from thank you very much for watching all the way through to the end of this video. If you have records for sale, we are always buying record collections like this. We will travel far and wide in order to get these kinds of records. We will treat you respectfully and kindly and as we would like to be treated. We believe in the golden rule, and we always pay very, very well for good records in good condition. Thank you again for watching this video, for subscribing. I think the subscribe button's down there. If you don't already subscribe to our channel, we'd really appreciate it if you would do that. And like this video, share it with friends, and ring the bell. All right, that's it for the sequel to the Dan Schwartz record collection. You will see these records in our store and on our Instagram for sale. We are at Permanent Records LA in the very near future.